Hi, welcome back to my channel. I'm gonna do like a basic video about healing, growing and moving on, stepping into yourself as a person, and how like every little helps towards the progress that you make in life. And I think it's like a theme of my videos and life at the moment of the new astrological era we're in, and also along the same lines as videos I have already made, but I do want to focus mostly on moving into yourself and like distancing from toxic people, healing from past issues around negative people and bad relationship with yourself as well, and also like healing from that and like growing from it and having the like permission to do that, individuating, having the like mindset of like, you know, people have to adjust to my growth. Some people aren't supposed to move with you in life, and it's just the really, really sad truth. Like, it's the fact in Aquarius, like it's known in the astrological era we've moved into. One of the facets of it that I looked at a while ago was that family and stuff like that is not so much as a guideline as it was in the last astrological era to be considered as something that you have to be like intertwined with in like a social group. It's more about what you stand for rather than like your family necessarily, as like I just have to stand by my family. And I think this is why people are finding it so hard as a collective at the moment, because I feel like a lot of families are like individuating a lot, and I do think there's a sense of like it will be better in the end. Like if you individuate as a human being and you either do decide to cut off like, you know, people, or but you know, or you keep contact with them and it's much more boundaried, either way you're going to be healthier. And I think having your own health, we much more focus on ourselves in Aquarius as well. As long as you're focusing on yourself and your priorities, be that like, you know, whatever your main priorities are as a person, they can vary. As long as you're putting your priorities first, it's just like a case of like you're not going to be resentful by waiting for other people to put you first, because they'll be doing the same thing. And it's just like, obviously there's no like rule book to life and the new astrological era, but I do think these videos do tend to help some people. Like they help me, and watching them back sometimes, I don't know, it's just a case of like you're going to be resentful, like regardless of the astrological era or not, but you're going to be resentful if you like rely on other people to meet your needs. It's so important to learn to meet your own needs. It's so important to heal and process the past, and if you don't know how to do that, like it's so normal and like common for you to be stuck in processes of like, I fell asleep last night and I this video about grief came on, like and it was just talking about how like you can be stuck in stages of grief, and you can grieve over several things like death and also relationships that are with people that are still alive. You can be stuck in the process of processing things, and it's so common and it's so normal, and it's just about like figuring out where your blockages are, where you've been hurt in places. Don't get me wrong, healing is amazing, and I can't speak for all people and the effects it will have on everyone, because everyone has the ability to change. But I will say, toxic people, narcissists and stuff like that, they will be, you know, there's limited change in their narcissistic patterns, so they may heal as a person, but it doesn't mean they'll become empathic people. And I think that's also something I've had to get my head around, in terms of it's so easy to project what you are like on other people, and that's something that I've massively had to adapt to, because people aren't all nice, they're not all kind. As much as I would love that to happen, there is a variety of good and bad in the world, and I'm sure there's negative, you know, I have negative in me and I have positive in me, but it doesn't mean that I'm like suitable to interact with, you know, or like have in my life through choice. And I think it's so important to have to be aware of choice and make conscious decisions about people in your life, because inevitably if someone's on this level of toxic, right, and you're on this level of like, you know, I'm not saying that we don't all have like toxic traits to an extent, but there is a fact of like people that are like narcissists and stuff, they're toxic by nature, you know. I did a video recently about light workers and star seeds and stuff. I talked about toxic star seeds, reptilian star seeds, blah blah blah. And you get light workers that are, you know, about peace, and they actually and empaths and stuff. And you know, and I have borderline traits, whether that's a toxic personality, but it's a case of, I'm also an empath, but it's a case of, you know, it's about discerning. It says in the Bible even, like, hate evil. Like, you know, I think everyone, like, it's really difficult. I don't think it's this case of everyone, but, you know, it's so important to discern toxic stuff. It's so important to discern evil in people, because people can be very deceptive, and a lot of toxic people, they'll take what they can get. They'll suck the life dry from you every single day until you are physically dead. There's nothing that, you know, because of the lack of empathy that comes with a lot of toxic personalities like narcissists, they don't care. They don't have that mental switch that an empath, for example, will have, or a typical person, to say, hey, I'm taking too much here, like, shall I just be, you know, human about this and, like, actually share the energetic balance here? No. People will take, like, it's like in nature, you know, you get snakes in nature. You know, I'm not saying everyone can't be a bit snaky, and I think it's very important to be with your snaky side. You know, there's this myth about empaths are like wet lettuce. You know, whether they're a bit like a blooming flower is one thing, rather than like they don't move like a snake so much, but it doesn't mean they can't have snaky personalities as well and go about life in a, you know, swervy way that, you know, and be nasty. Empaths can be really strong, way more strong than narcissists, often. They can destroy narcissists. So empaths are not weak, I'll say, and typical people, they're not weak. It's, I think what makes you strong and weak is being in your strength. Luckily, toxicity is generally not a strong quality though. Like, people can be as like loud, blasé, they can make so many lies, they can make so much noise and get so much attention, but what they're standing on is not faith, it's not truth, it's not, okay, I'm not sure about faith, but it's not truth, it's not strength, it's not, it might be strength from some, you know, place of fear within, but it, you know, it's not a place of divinity and solidarity. You know, it's a place of inferiority and an overcompensation for a personality deficiency. That's where toxicity comes from, and toxic personalities, and it's unchangeable. I've mentioned this a couple of times, it's something I've got my head around, and it's a case of, like, as I said, if you have someone that's not toxic and someone that's toxic, because of the law of frequency, you're gonna like blend in some level. You know, being around this type of situation, you're gonna blend to a middle ground. You know, they might do more things to attention seek in order to feel more adequate and more less toxic and more, you know, adequate next to a person that's not toxic, and you might just maybe diminish yourself a bit, hide yourself a bit, get a bit toxic, because they say people that aren't toxic will pick up toxic traits being around toxic people, and there's just sort of this gradual fade that happens in this sort of leveling out of personality and level, and it's just not, I don't think, healthy for either, to be honest. But it's just what's going to happen, you know, if you're around this sort of a situation, and you shouldn't blame yourself. Like, even though I have this level of empathy for like toxic people, like, oh god, like I force them to be more toxic and like attention seeking. You're not responsible for another person's personality. Like, yeah, you could argue, I like this rule of and that I've heard in narcissistic relationships. You can justify anything with a small thought, even though it doesn't actually make rational sense. So you can say, yes, maybe I've my presence has been there for a narcissistic person to kick up their narcissistic traits because they feel more inadequate being around me, and they're still toxic and choosing to make that choice, and it wasn't me that made that choice, it was my very presence, which I'm able to do in my own right. You know, this is why obviously getting out of a toxic situation is like, you know, where you want to be. Generally, I feel like if you're not toxic, but obviously I can't make decisions for you, but it came into my mind recently that, you know, you're never going to find that level ground with someone that's not on your level because of the inevitable shift of energy that has to happen. And it's just a fact, you know what I mean? And I think people hang on for so long for toxic people because of all the future faking and narcissism, and like, oh, maybe they'll change, maybe they'll heal, maybe one day they appreciated you, or they acted like they did and they don't really. Maybe they love bombed you and they bought you a load of stuff and they said, oh, well done, and you know, they kind of put this person mask across of like, I'm a healthy person, like I, you know, am having all this fun, and talk to you on your level because they do mirror as a personality. You know, I don't want to get too far into narcissism. You know, they've mirrored you to an extent if you have a small portion of time that you spend with them and you see their mirroring you. But you know, it's an inevitable drain of energy for the non-toxic person as well, to actually have to be drained by a negative person. You know, they probably love it because they're bringing themselves up, but at the same time it is obviously a fact within narcissism that they also, it brings out their sense of inadequacy when they're around people that they feel inferior towards, which if someone else is not as inferior as them, they're going to feel more inferior just by, you know, fact. So but again, that's not for you to worry about their inadequacy because that is within them. As in terms of like blame shifting and stuff, like that's not your fault. You force them to feel inadequate. That comes from their own choices and coping strategies, and obviously their personality, which is not in your control. It's about thinking about what's in your control. Can you control cutting off the relationship with them? Yeah, but if it benefits you, if you're somewhere that it benefits you to be around them, for example in a work situation that, you know, you want to be at and you need to be at for the cost and stuff, you're within your rights to be there, you know what I mean? Yes, there's a law of like we all affect each other, but you know, it's I don't know whether to liken it to nature, but you know, there's you know, reptiles in nature, there's parasites in nature. I always think sociopaths are like parasites. They inject you with your toxicity and they suck all your blood. And like, you know, and then you get birds that like mind their own business in the sky and they look pretty and, you know, shit on people, and you get a variety of things in between, of course. I have a video on totem poles and spirit animals if you guys look at that, if I talk about animals and stuff. But anyway, yeah, I do think I've elevated in this new astrological era in a lot of ways. I'm still going, I'm not gonna lie, but I do think every day I get closer to that place I want to be. And I think it's obviously an ongoing process of working on yourself, but at the same time I do think because of the astrological era there's been a big shift in like the way we all work. So I do think there's like this level of stability that you gain once you've kind of made that transition into the new astrological era. You know, I think it's a process of like upkeep, but I think in a lot of ways when you transcend a situation you don't have to consistently transcend it, you just kind of resonate on that level anyway. And I'm really I don't want to use the word proud, I'm really humbled actually, if anything. I'm really happy to call myself a healthy person compared to, yeah, I have my toxic traits, yeah, I have borderline traits, I do, I have impulsive borderline traits, but compared, and you shouldn't compare yourself, but honestly compared to a lot of the population that are point blank toxic and actually are very dark in the way they operate, and they don't look for the light, they look for the dark, and they are in the dark, and they work in that way, because it is a truth. It even says in starseeds that you can get starseeds that gravitate towards light, you get starseeds that gravitate towards dark, you know. And I'm sure there are some I don't even want to talk about that, but I'm really proud and not proud, I'm really happy to say that I'm like a person that, I'm not perfect, and I don't think perfection is something to strive for. I think going through life in a temperate way is much more realistic and also helpful and fulfilling than striving for perfection in general. And this is another thing, like even when narcissists, I don't really want to keep resonating with narcissists, but even narcissists can monitor their behaviour and change it so much, and then get really frustrated when like you don't accept them back into your life because they've made changes, because they may have made changes, but you don't have to accept a toxic person back into your life, which is another thing that I've had to wrap my head fully around, which is that even if people make changes, because I think there's this sense of willing that a lot of people have to sort of make that change to kind of win you back, if you like, and that's honestly the place it comes from. It's like a level of sucking you back into their toxic hamster wheel, if I'm honest. But even if you look at it like, oh, they've changed, they're trying and whatever, and you don't have to just inevitably allow them into your life. We have I think this is the level I'm at now, just coming to the full term that I am responsible for my own life and who I let in and out. You know, I'm not responsible for the trauma that occurred to me and the stresses that came into my life, but I do have the power to pray for healing and to process my emotions and feelings, to get to the point where my body has released that stress and trauma from my system, and my mind has released it from my system, where I'm clear-minded enough to make honest discernment, because honesty with yourself, if nothing else, because we don't see certain stuff, and that's just the truth. We're not perfect people. People can be extremely deceptive. Other people can be extremely deceptive. We can deceive ourselves. It's natural within the mind to cope by, you know, rationalizing a situation, especially if you had to, as a younger person, to be able to actually cope with a situation. It's such an honest and common place to be in, to actually do that, and it's so normal to do that, and it can be something that you still do now, and I do, and I think there's nothing wrong with that, but it's a case of processing the past to the point where you accept that served you in the past to feel a certain way about something, but to come to the realization as a healthy adult, or if, you know, I don't know what age anyone is watching this, but I think as a healthy adult, to process, you know, that part of your life and integrate the inner child into the healthy adult, to say, you know, I'm handling this now. If something comes up that's provoking and anxiety provoking and stress provoking, to be able to, and I know we can't always do that, and obviously you can't control the amount of stress that's in your life, and I know I've gone through the mental health system, so I know exactly what it's like to have way too much stress than it's capable of handling. You need to, there's so many resources for mental health. Just to say, obviously probably most people know this now, but people always go through different stuff. There's so many services for medications and like therapies and everything, and it's really, really supportive from my experience, and there's always hope in that avenue for everyone who needs to hear this. And I obviously know that like most people can handle stuff within their own lives, but if you do need extra help, please reach out for it, because I'm a number one advocate for the mental health service. And anyway, let's just leave all that out. So yeah, but I can't remember what I'm saying now, but yeah, I guess just like integrating your inner child and saying, like, you know, to the point where, because we always, like, there's always going to be stresses that come up, and in this new astrological era, Saturn's a bitch, I think, in terms of we're ruled by Saturn and Uranus in this astrological era, and Saturn's a bitch in terms of it brings a lot of difficulty, hold-ups, tension, stresses, in the Saturn aspect, and the Uranus is more of a transcendence kind of planet and other stuff to do with other aspects. But Saturn does create a lot of hold-ups, and it's what it is. But yeah, just learning how to take that time to process, as I said, and being like, my healthy adult has got it, like, or I'm handling it through whatever means that is, and being able to put yourself at peace through that level is actually really lovely as well, because like the more healing you have, the more freedom you have, you know, the more clear you think, the more sorted you are in your mind, you know, and you can't obviously always be sorted as a person, and it's not, you know, to judge yourself if you're not fully sorted. We always want to process in a journey, I think, throughout anything in life, and we always go through different seasons, but we're going through such a shift at the moment to process a lot of the old stuff and sort of like rebuild our lives in a new astrological era. And it's like, you know, I think even I saw in a tarot reading online that I recently looked at, not advocating tarot necessarily, not advocating witchcraft, but it mentions this idea of burning, sort of identifying broken bridges and burning the ones that need to be broken and building the ones that can be saved or you want to be saved, and evaluating the ones that should be saved and the ones that shouldn't be saved. And I think it's just about discerning toxic relationships for a start, making the adult healthy steps to protect yourself, to step into the life you want. If you want to move. If you want to, get therapy or counselling, do that if that's something you want to do or need to do. If you want to be exercising more and being healthier, if you want to, eat better, if you want to make more friends, there's so many like social groups online, like for in person and obviously online as well. Communities are so vast with like things like Meetup, which I think is worldwide, and obviously like Bumble and like dating apps we have and everything. Bumble you can meet friends from, pretty sure that's worldwide, but there's so many places and avenues to meet new people. Working on yourself, just journaling more and being like more open if you want to start being musical. And I walked past this really talented girl when I was walking through somewhere today singing, and I was like, not gonna lie, it just reminded me of myself. I'm not saying I was really talented, but I used to I didn't used to play in public very often, but if ever I was in that situation, it gave me a bit, I sound like really cocky now because I'm like, oh, she's really talented, but she had a gift, you know what I mean? She had a beautiful singing voice. If you want to take up more of your gifts and explore more of your gifts, because often people don't know what their gifts are until they explore them, and you can find new gifts at any age. If you want to read more, whatever that is, learn more information about certain stuff. I don't know, people are interested in all sorts of different stuff, and also personality wise, we're all gravitate towards different things. Some people gravitate a lot towards money, some people gravitate a lot towards, families, and personal, circles, relationships. Some people gravitate more towards themselves, knowledge, or there's so many things that we can gravitate towards, and I do think there's an element of it in most of us, but it's just about finding what makes you happy and what makes you fulfilled, what meets your needs. When I say what makes you happy, I don't mean like just live every day eating cookie dough ice cream. Obviously, I don't think there's anything wrong with that from time to time, and do you want to go a whole week eating cookie dough ice cream? Wouldn't advocate it, but or like however long you want. And I wouldn't advocate it. I'm like, you can do whatever the fuck you want with your life because you live. I wouldn't but you know what I mean. We can all make whatever the fuck choices we want, and I think obviously you're going to make them within reason, within your own discernment. Do whatever you like, but that's the kind of attitude that is just so important to have, because no one has the right to tell you what you can and can't do. Parents. It's been very validated in society for a long time that strict parents are just what they are, and demanding parents are what they are. Parents that are, nasty or unfair are just being parents, and it's just this sort of myth, I think, that needs to be expelled. Like, I can't speak for everyone's family, and obviously culture has a lot to do with how people raise their family. Who am I to judge people who raise their families in whatever ways they want? But obviously, I believe strongly, and I think this is the humanitarian way of going about life, that we all have our own freedom of intuition and choice within life. And I think, I'm not here to tell the world how to parent themselves, but I'm very glad that the world is a lot more regulated on people's rights and stuff these days than we were like 100 years ago, because I'm sure potentially the world got away with more than it does now, in terms of crime and stuff. Obviously physical violence towards children was allowed very, very recently in time, 50 years ago, whatever. We've come so far as a society in that short period of time, luckily, and we've got things like the internet, which is a fucking miracle, and it's about being grateful for things, I think. But yeah, that's more or less it. I've kind of rambled for a while, but enjoy your life because you only live once. I don't want to quote 2010's YOLO, but YOLO, we only live once, and you know, every moment you spend getting aggravated by a toxic person is another moment that you don't spend taking in the miraculous life that God gave you on this planet. I do think we all kind of come to terms with things in our own, you know, good time, and there's lessons you have to learn from negative situations. I'm not saying all negative situations are for no reason, but I do think, you know, there's no point in suffer. You know, we're going to suffer inevitably according to the Bible, but there's no point in suffering if you don't learn from it. You know, and that's usually why we're allowed to suffer by God. God doesn't want us to suffer, but He allows us to help us grow and learn, mold us into the people that we're supposed to be. So that's a bit of light for any sort of negativity you might have been experiencing. But thanks for listening, and I'll speak to you soon. Bye.